Okay, let's get this page completed. Moving on to the next module, which is going to be the Visions module. So targeting the Visions module. Again, we're going to need to add a background color and some padding. So I'm just going to copy and paste that, update this color. Can't remember exactly what the color is. It's going to be black, okay. Oops. Cool, and we'll see that we can't see anything in there, which is going to require us to flip the color of text inside that module. Awesome. So we will end up with a background color, background image there. We'll come back to do all the background images in one go. And I think it might be the directory module. Is that right? Yep, directory module. Oops. Copy and paste this. So we need a background color and some padding. The color for the directory module is E2FFE0. Super good, and that's all we need to do with the directory module. Conversations module again is a reversed out module, so I might copy and paste for that too. Copy and paste from the Vision module. That's what we need there. Looking good. And the final module on the page, before we come back and do some background images and finish off, is our footer element, which we called page bottom. And that's a series of links in there, so we're going to need to style some anchor tags. Firstly, we'll give some padding to the just the full page bottom. And, oops. And we'll look at the anchor tags inside there, and I think we'll just give them a color of white, and that might do us for the footer. Yeah, I reckon that looks fine. Maybe just finish it off with a hover state. Just copying and pasting again. Let's use the that blue color. Cool. I might make them a little bit smaller. That looks alright to me. I reckon we'll move on. Okay. Saving the work as we go. It's all looking as expected, pretty much. We now just have to add in some background images. So that'll probably be a new kind of CSS property to include. So by default, when you add an image to a background element, it kind of tiles, so it sort of repeats itself on the x-axis and the y-axis. which is really good for making patterns, large areas of patterns using very small image. And that's what I've done at the top here. I've got a, like I think it might be a 10 pixel by 10 pixel image, or even smaller, which is a kind of little pattern of diagonal lines. And I've saved that as a PNG and added that into my Cloudinary account. And let's add it into the background of this page top element, I think it's called. So just trying to locate it. Page top. I'll go down to the bottom of page top. And we're going to add, just like we add a background color, we're going to add a background image. Super good. And the background image is going to require a URL. And we add that URL inside curly brackets with some quote marks. So this is our a property, and this will be the value to our property. So we need to actually get a URL. So I'm going to jump over to my text and grab the URL for that pattern. So you can see pattern small. And I'll paste that in there. And you can see that that has loaded up that pattern, and it's tiled it vertically and horizontally to fill out that kind of space, which is good, looks good. Now let me just show you, I think it's background repeat. Yeah, background repeat. So if you didn't want your image to repeat, you could have background repeat and then write no repeat. So if I do that, you can see that I've got this tiny little image right up the top there that is just on its lonesome in the background of this div here. That's not actually what I want this time around. I do want it to repeat, so I'm going to take that back out. So you could repeat just on the x-axis, you can repeat on the y-axis. There's also properties for moving around that image within the div, so you could position it over here or at the bottom if you like. So have a look up those properties. So I've added that background image. I need to add a background image to visions. So I'm going to come down to the visions module, and I might just point out that you can grab background assets from within CodePen. So I'm going to go to Photos, and I'm going to look up some weird image. They're not that weird. Seymour. I'll go with this one here. If I pull that down here, you can see it's copy as background full or small. So I'm going to copy it as background full. And I'm going to paste that into my CSS, and you can see that it's added the entire declaration, so including the property and the value, and it's added in the URL, and you can see it's loaded that into the background of that div, which is great. And I actually did have the original ready to go, but I might just leave that. One thing that I will do is I'll add one more property to our CSS. You can see that that was quite a large image, and it's stretched it. Well, it hasn't stretched it, it's just placed it at its actual size, and so it's kind of cropping a lot of that image off. And we can adjust that by adding a property which is called background size. So if I add in background size, I can add the value of cover to that, and it will fit the image as best as it possibly can, depending on the width and height, into that current space, which is excellent. So I'm going to do the same thing to finish off this final panel here in Conversations. The Conversations module requires a background image, so I'm going to go over to, I'm just going to grab this one, which is an Unsplash image, but it's probably just easier to copy and paste the code. And I'm going to add the background size element. Cover. Super good. And for this last module, I think I just had a bit of extra space down the bottom there, so I could do that in a bunch of different ways, but I might just add some height to that module. I don't know, 600 pixels. That might be too much. But now you can see a bit more of that image underneath there. So that's great. There we are. I think we're pretty much finished with this build. We've added in our branding at the top, setting our single column design into the center of the page. We've got a body background color. We've added some navigational elements. And these navigational elements, just to finish off here, are going to link to these elements down the page. Okay, so if I click on sounds, I want the image, I want the page to jump to that section. I can do that by linking to the ID. Okay, and this is kind of one of the excellent usages for IDs, is that we can kind of target them in links, but we can also target them in things like JavaScript if we wanted to kind of hook in some JavaScript functionality. So coming up to our, in the HTML, our navigational elements, our links up here. So see how I added in just a dead link and it doesn't do anything when I click on it. I'm actually going to add my ID for each of these sections into that href there. So if I go down to sound modules, and I copy and paste that into that link there, and I do that to others as well. So sound module, we had visions module, and we had the directory module. Finally, the conversations module. Oops, geez. Okay, so we've in our href, the value of our href, we've actually added that ID. And so if I do click on the ID now, it will actually jump us down to that point in the page, which is pretty good. You can see that there'll be definitely some uses for that. And directory. Alright, so our job here is done. All the CSS and presentation is in place, including some background images, a background image that repeats here, two background images set behind our text there, so plenty of design possibilities. And finally, we added some links within our page from a navigational element to a particular div in the HTML